Exactly 24 hours remained until the complete halt of resistance. On April 29, 1945, 15 meters below the ruins of Berlin, the subject and Eva Braun formalized their union. The defensive perimeter had fractured, the ammunition reserves approached zero. The physical infrastructure of the bunker was failing. The ventilation system choked on pulverized debris. Intake fans pushed gray powder through the air ducts. The ceiling thickness exceeded 2 meters of reinforced concrete. But the kinetic energy of the surface explosions bypassed the armor, destroying the internal communications. Heavy artillery strikes caused severe seismic impact. The floor slabs vibrated continuously. General Weidling delivered his damage assessment. Concrete dust settled onto the wooden desks right during his briefing. The supply lines were dead. Exactly 24 hours remained until the complete zeroing of the artillery reserve. The defense lacked the resources to repel the Soviet advance. The command rejected any breakout attempts. By 13 hours, the kitchen issued the standard daily ration: pasta and canned vegetables. The internal logistics still operated. The subject and Eva Braun consumed the calories. They ate in silence. The walls shook from the surface bombardments. At 14 hours, the subject initiated the final protocol. He conducted a structural inspection of the remaining personnel. He moved through the fortified corridors. He shook hands with the staff. No long speeches. A mechanical review of the human resources. His physiological tremors had stopped. The nervous system stabilized under the pressure of the final calculation. The inspection concluded. The command returned to the private office. How to guarantee that a physical corpse avoids public demonstration? An incoming radiogram from Milan compounded the physical destruction of the perimeter defense. This transmission mandated a strict revision of the corpse disposal guidelines. Within 48 hours, these specific intelligence dispatches would force the Berlin garrison to spend deficit fuel on cremation. The liquidation protocol for April 30, 1945, incorporated precise forensic data regarding Benito Mussolini and Clara Petacci. Partisans executed the Italian dictator. The executioners subsequently suspended both corpses upside down in Piazzale Loreto. This location provided unrestricted civilian access to the remains. Severe post-mortem mutilation followed. This specific factor of uncontrolled public exposure dictated the future logistics for destroying organic matter in Berlin. To prevent a comparable scenario, the command initiated a strict bureaucratic procedure. The Final Testament established a preventive measure of total control over the physical remains. Secretary Tadel Junge processed the spoken directives into a standardized typed format. The text outlined political succession and mandated immediate thermal destruction. The format remained rigid. The subject authorized the printed documents with his signature at 4 o'clock in the morning on April 29th. Having finalized the political testament, the subject initiated the procedure to alter his civil status. Outside, Soviet units held positions 1,000 meters away. Inside, an official meticulously checked certificates confirming the absence of hereditary diseases. Bureaucrats processed racial purity forms while the front line collapsed. Magistrate Walter Wagner executed the administrative protocol. He laid the standard registration blanks on the desk. The bride had remained a hidden asset for 16 years. Now, the law required her formal documentation. Wagner verified their ancestry. He confirmed their physiological fitness. He demanded verbal consent. The apparatus functioned without deviation. The groom was 56 years old. His physical deterioration was severe. He dragged his boots across the floor, 15 meters underground. He reached for the fountain pen. A violent tremor shook his left hand as the steel nib struck the paper. The erratic ink strokes recorded his neurological collapse. Above the reinforced ceiling, the perimeter disintegrated. The Red Army had secured Potsdamer Platz. The distance to Soviet artillery batteries measured less than 1 kilometer. At that range, the flight time of a heavy shell equaled mere seconds. The concrete vibrated, yet the paperwork demanded completion. Joseph Goebbels stood by the table and watched the ink dry. The legal registry secured the signatures of exactly 2 official witnesses. What was the statistical probability of survival for companions during the collapse of command structures? Historical data reduced to 0. Eva Braun remaining for the registry signing matched the precise historical pattern of eliminating Supreme Command partners. Throughout the 20th century, liquidating immediate associates during the final 24 hours of a regime operated as a standardized protocol. Commanders divided available elimination methods strictly into ballistic trauma and chemical neutralization. Chemical elimination provided maximum reliability without generating acoustic signatures inside confined underground spaces. The primary instruments were poisonous capsules containing a highly concentrated dose of hydrocyanic acid. A standard glass ampule with toxin, issued to the top echelon of command, ensured immediate results. Activation required the subject to position the container directly between their back molars. The sharp crunch of the crushed glass cyanide ampule released lethal vapor into the oral cavity. Cellular respiration halted entirely within an extremely narrow time frame of 10 to 15 seconds. Survival statistics for the female partners of fallen leaders demonstrate a total lack of positive outcomes. Capture by advancing Allied units presented unacceptable risks regarding military intelligence extraction. This exact risk calculus drove the coordinated application of terminal procedures across multiple documented examples. Couples terminated their lives simultaneously to prevent any possibility of individual surrender. The administrative registry effectively finalized the necessary legal preparations. Execution time had arrived. SS Adjutant Otto Gunsche pushed the heavy door. He tracked the exact minute biological processes stopped. Heinz Linge had closed this door earlier. That isolation allowed the combination of ballistic and chemical methods. Linge stepped inside. The air hit them. Burnt powder mixed with concentrated bitter almonds. They located the chemical odor first. 2 bodies occupied the sofa. The woman reclined. Cyanide worked fast. The man sat upright. A bullet hole shattered his right temple. A 7.65mm weapon guaranteed instant destruction of brain tissue, while hydrocyanic acid irreversibly blocked cellular respiration within seconds. Linge approached. He checked the bodies. No pulse, no breath. A discharged Walther pistol rested on the rug directly beneath the armrest. How much petrol is required for the complete destruction of a human skeleton? Practice showed the reserves inside the army jerrycans were critically low. Following the pronouncement of death, Heinz Linge and Erich Kempka initiated the final logistical phase. The objective was the thermal eradication of organic matter above ground. They wrapped the corpses in blankets. The men carried the heavy load up the concrete stairs. They pushed through the emergency exit. Above them, Soviet artillery pounded the Chancellery garden. Shrapnel cut through the trees. The female body belonged to the recognized wife of the Chancellor. She held that official status for less than 18 hours. Now, both required immediate disposal. Linge and Kempka located a fresh artillery crater. They dropped the remains into the dirt. Kempka unscrewed the metal caps. The men poured standard motor petrol directly over the fabric and flesh. A match struck. The vapor ignited instantly. A loud hissing of incompletely burning soft tissues filled the crater. Liquid fuel boiled against cold skin. Automotive petrol burning in open air peaks at 800 degrees Celsius. This thermal output is fundamentally inadequate for the destruction of a calcified skeleton. The chemical reaction stalled. The tibia bones remained practically immune to the thermal effects of the low-temperature flame. Hours passed. Kempka poured more petrol. The supply drained rapidly. Total biological eradication failed. Open-air combustion merely charred the outer layers. The men aborted the destruction protocol. Guards shoveled loose earth over the partially charred bone fragments at the bottom of the crater. How did the primary target's evacuation fail? The target chose the wrong vehicle. An Alfa Romeo sports car drew immediate visual contact on the highway. While the Berlin Destruction Protocol failed, April 25, 1945, marked a parallel logistical collapse in Milan. The route would terminate 3 days later at a stone wall. 80 kilometers separated Milan from Dongo. The convoy moved north toward the Swiss border. German units provided the escort. Partisan forces established a blockade on April 27th. The convoy halted. Tires ground against gravel. The Alfa Romeo engine shut down. The motor died. The inspection began. Mussolini attempted visual camouflage. He wore a Luftwaffe overcoat. A standard-issue Luftwaffe helmet covered his head. The physical masking failed completely. A partisan approached the vehicle. He leaned in. He checked the passenger. He pulled off the Luftwaffe helmet. The guards identified him immediately. Partisans secured Benito Mussolini and Claretta Petacci. Petacci demanded joint detention. Guards ignored the emotional display. The escape route ended. The captors relocated the prisoners to Bonzanico di Mezzegra, near Lake Como. Partisans locked the targets under armed guard inside the Di Maria farmhouse. The ages of the captured targets were 56 and 33 years. Inside the rural isolation space at Bonzanico di Mezzegra, 2 individuals with radically different legal statuses waited under armed watch. The primary subject had directed a national state apparatus for 20 years. Now, he sat inside a peasant farmhouse as a captive. The other was a civilian. The former dictator lost his actual power long before the arrest. In 1943, German commandos extracted him from mountain custody. Berlin installed the former leader as the administrative head of northern Italy. The Salo Republic was a pure puppet state. It existed for exactly 19 months before total apparatus collapse. His regime dissolved. Clara Petacci held no government rank. The civilian had maintained direct contact with the primary target for 12 years. Guards considered her a secondary objective. They offered a safe departure. She rejected the exit protocol. The civilian refused to leave the isolation room. How long did the trial of the former head of state take? The procedure lasted exactly a few minutes. The tribunal finalized 2 death sentences. On the morning of April 28th, Mussolini became a formal defendant. Armed guards secured the perimeter. Their boots produced a monotonous sound. Steps echoed. Clara Petacci received accomplice status. The Liberation Committee required no evidence. Mussolini initiated verbal negotiations. He leveraged non-existent political resources. He proposed territorial concessions. He referenced unverified Allied contacts. Negotiations failed. Petacci contested the execution format. She demanded standard legal protocols. The officers refused. Appeals failed. Process concluded. The commander issued a direct order to transport both individuals to the designated execution site. The armed escort maneuvers the 2 condemned targets toward the stone wall of the villa and issues a strict command to halt. The liquidation protocol commenced late in the afternoon on April 28, 1945. Within the geographic confines of Giulino di Mezzegra. Walter Audizio assumed tactical control, positioning the primary and secondary subjects directly against the heavy masonry barrier. Standard ballistic procedure for a firing squad in these field conditions required an optimal engagement distance of 5 to 8 meters. The execution detail raised their assigned rifles, deliberately aligning the iron sights with the center mass of both figures. The sharp metallic clank of rifle bolts cycling into the locked position signaled the final procedural step. Pre-firing observations indicated rapid, chaotic movements from the subjects as they engaged in frantic attempts to physically overlap and shield each other. Protection was impossible. These uncoordinated physical shifts completely failed to alter the calculated ballistic trajectories of the execution squad. The commander fired. The massive kinetic impact of multiple rifle bullets penetrated the targets, instantly shattering bone tissue and displacing them from a vertical stance. The projectiles drove them down. 2 lifeless bodies remained on the ground. Why transport dead men over dozens of kilometers? Exclusively for visual confirmation of power transfer in central Milan. Rifle fire did not terminate the operation. Guards loaded 16 fascist leaders into a transport truck. On April 29th, the convoy reached Piazzale Loreto. 1 year prior, German units left 15 executed partisans in this exact square. Coordinates matched exactly. Handlers dragged the cargo from the truck bed. They dropped the bodies directly onto the cobblestones. Civilians broke through. Crowds trampled them. Bone structures collapsed under the mechanical pressure. A local woman stepped forward. She pressed a handgun against the primary target. 5 bullets. The rounds penetrated the lifeless torso at 0 distance. Guards fired upwards. They needed space for the structural phase. Technicians bound the ankles with thick ropes. They routed the lines over a petrol station awning. Men pulled. The steel girders creaked under the sudden weight. Inverted suspension triggered an immediate physiological effect. Gravity forced residual blood down into the cranial vault, explaining the severe facial deformation seen on post-mortem records. The targets dangled above the pavement. Foreign correspondents stepped into the clearing. They photographed the suspended objects for the global press. How did the loyalty protocol break? The square in front of the Central Committee answered with a rising drone. Mussolini suffered an extrajudicial street execution, but the Romanian military sought to legitimize their takeover through a formal tribunal. That required a preceding cascading failure of the state command apparatus. The programmed choreography of a state rally collided with the uncontrolled chaos of a real crowd. On December 21, 1989, State Transport Logistics delivered tens of thousands of factory workers directly to the plaza in Bucharest. Propaganda officers distributed approved placards. The square held roughly 100,000 people. They did not clap. Their collective refusal to applaud instantly mutated into a physically deafening acoustic strike. A low hum started in the back rows. It amplified. The rising physical noise of the protest completely overpowered the official broadcast volume. State television engineers cut the live transmission at exactly 12:06. The mechanical failure of the carefully planned event unfolded in real time. Nikolai read from the script. The unforeseen hum of the crowd drowned out the dynamic speakers. The dictator stopped. His face registered pure confusion from the technical glitch. The feedback loop of state propaganda snapped. 24 years of rule collapsed into an instantaneous physical loss of control over the plaza. The masses rejected the audio output. Security personnel breached the balcony. Bodyguards dragged the dictator away from the platform. The extraction proceeded. While the state security apparatus monitored millions of citizens, it proved entirely blind to the population's actual hostility. The immediate loss of control on December 21st exposed a rigid design. The regime spent 24 years building this exact framework. Elena Ceausescu managed the internal intelligence channels. Born in 1916, she lacked formal education. She substituted it with strict surveillance grids. She directed the secret police. The agency ran hundreds of thousands of informants. Their data collection methods failed. The loop broke. The security apparatus could not predict the physical acoustic rebellion on the central square. Subordinates filtered the daily intelligence feed. Elena demanded constant academic validation. She accumulated dozens of fraudulent honorary doctorates from foreign institutions. These fake credentials cemented the information vacuum. Officers reported only positive metrics. The files lied. External conditions shifted. Mikhail Gorbachev initiated reforms. Borders opened up. By December 1989, the internal surveillance grid collapsed under its own rigidity. The leadership received no accurate reports. The dictates remained static. The ruling couple possessed zero objective data regarding their own nation. Where do you evacuate the high command when military garrisons stop accepting communications? You take to the air. Operating without objective ground data, the leadership immediately initiated the Emergency Aerial Extraction Protocol. The monotonous roar of the helicopter rotors became their only remaining controlled environment. Outside the glass, 24 years of security architecture simply vanished. The flight path stretched northwest. The cabin dimensions now defined their entire zone of operational influence. Below them, ground forces actively ignored direct radio transmissions, while garrison commanders physically disabled their communication receivers. The pilot monitored the fuel flow. The aircraft could not remain airborne indefinitely. He initiated the descent toward an army base near Targovishta. The navigation coordinates placed them exactly 64 kilometers northwest of Bucharest. Nikolai and Elena disembarked on the tarmac. They expected standard guard protocols. Base personnel surrounded the aircraft instead. Local officers had already severed the administrative chain of command. Soldiers detained the targets on the spot. The extraction logistics collapsed. Across the flight path, the leadership secured exactly 0 loyal units. 4 days of isolation at a military base. The extraction ended at the Targovishta barracks. Here, the VIP protection protocol formally terminated. Strict custody began. Guards locked the targets in separate rooms. The cells shared a single wall. Acoustic isolation failed. They heard voices. The prisoners recognized each other. But physical contact remained impossible. Coordination failed. The confinement lasted from December 22nd to December 25th. General Andrei Kemenichi took command. Military Unit 01417 secured the perimeter. Kemenichi enforced strict discipline across the heavily armed garrison, ensuring the volatile troops inflicted no unauthorized physical harm. The targets reacted differently. Nikolai initiated verbal negotiations. Elena demanded protocol compliance. She required official titles. The guards refused. The parameters of reality shifted. The national command structure changed. The National Salvation Front secured the capital. General Kemenichi transferred jurisdiction to this new authority. The transition ended. The detainees lost all state status. The National Salvation Front ordered the immediate assembly of a military tribunal. How do you legitimize the elimination of a regime in 24 hours? You build a legal facade. The new command in Bucharest required immediate documentary formatting for the liquidation. They scheduled the procedure for December 25, 1989. Standard military tribunal protocols require weeks of evidence gathering. The officers at the Targovishta military base compressed the schedule to 3 hours. Soldiers loaded Nikolai and Elena into an armored personnel carrier. The steel hull radiated winter cold. The vehicle transported them across the courtyard to the garrison command office. Guards converted a small meeting room into a courtroom. They arranged yellow wooden desks into a strict perimeter. The state assigned attorney Nicolae Teodorescu to the defense. The lawyer met his clients inside the improvised hall. 10 minutes. The officers allocated exactly 10 minutes for the defense to consult the clients and prepare against a guaranteed death sentence. Teodorescu presented a single tactical option. The accused could plead insanity to bypass the firing squad. This strategy demanded a complete admission of mental collapse. Elena dismissed the lawyer instantly. She demanded formal state recognition. The refusal was categorical. Military judges take their seats at an empty table and read the charges aloud. The desk holds only empty water glasses, no investigation files, no evidence folders. The tribunal procedure, which Elena rejected moments prior, never intended to analyze facts. Genocide, undermining the national economy, abuse of power. The prosecution presents 0 forensic data. 0 witnesses appear. The legal framework requires only a formal declaration of guilt. Nikolai attempts a logical counterargument. He cites specific economic policies. He details completed infrastructure projects. He expects a rational debate over his long-term administrative decisions, speaking like an engineer defending a blueprint. The judges ignore his data. The entire hearing concludes in 55 minutes. The proceeding bypassed all standard evidentiary requirements. The military officers signed the mandatory paperwork. The trial served exclusively to formalize the execution protocol.